We have the manager for river operations at Goulburn Murray Water. That is Andrew Shields. He's going to provide a water outlook for Victoria. Each of these guys will talk for about 20 minutes or thereabouts. Sorry, 10 minutes. I'll try that again. 20 minutes. The instructions aren't clear. 20 minutes, and then we'll have some questions at the end. So if you've got questions for Andrew, we'll hold them off to the end. Does that make sense? Okay, we've rehearsed that. Off you go.
All good. Thanks. Still good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me along. Can you hear me all right, or do I need to stand a bit closer to the mics? I can stand wherever suits. Yep, perfect. All right, so I'll click.
Andrew, if you want to wander, there is a hand mic there.
Oh, sure. Yep. Let me just turn this back on. All right. So I'll follow on from Dale's talk. There's some pretty interesting scenarios there that we might have in front of us. So just talk a little bit about recent conditions, where we are as far as seasonal determinations or allocations, as I'll probably talk to them as. What are the outlooks? The risk of spill, I'll briefly touch on that for those of you who are in Victoria and have water sitting in spillable water accounts at the moment. And then perhaps a little look ahead around what we might see into the coming months. So Dale mentioned around what we've seen as far as the rainfall outlooks and what's been happening in the oceans, but on the ground in June, this is the rainfall that we received over Victoria. So the blue colours there showing that rainfall over most of the northern part of Victoria is in the well above average or very much above average category. And that was mainly driven by some widespread rain in that early part of June. And then what we saw with that rain was some pretty significant inflows into our storages. So apologies for a slide with so many numbers on it, but I'll take some time to talk through it. So on the left-hand side here, we've got which storage we're talking about, going from Nillacoody on the broken system, Eppalock, Eildon, Goulburn Weir. So that's inflows that we get between Lake Eildon and Goulburn Weir. We've got Cairn, Curran, Tullaroop over in the Loddon catchment, Dartmouth and Hume, Lake Buffalo, just on the Buffalo River there up near Myrtleford, and William Hovell on the King River. So these are the inflow volumes that we received in June. Compare that to what the average volume is for June, and just then what's the percentage of average. And then the last column here is the probability of exceedance. So what that refers to is where that ranks in the historical record. So for example, at Eppalock, 26 gigalitres of inflow, a 16% probability of exceedance means in 16 years in 100 we'd expect to get more, and 84 years in 100 we expect to get less. So a couple of highlights that I wanted to point out here. Eildon, we had 350 gigalitres of inflow in the month of June. Compare that to an average of about 110. So more than three times the long-term average in the month of June. Prior to the rainfall occurring, we had Eildon at about 93% of capacity. Those inflows that we got probably over a couple of day spell there, put about 4% into the storage. So straight up to about 97%, and ever since we've been managing Eildon to try and keep some space in the dam while the inflows have still been quite high with these fronts that keep moving through across the state. And just at the end there, so in the top 10% of the inflow records for June. And a pretty similar story across most of the storages, well and truly above the average June. So that set us up for pretty wet catchment conditions heading into July and then in August and into spring. Another slide with lots of numbers on it and some details. But what we've got here is where all the storage is at in northern Victoria and the shared storages on the Murray. What you'll notice there with all of these, if they're not 100%, they're very close to it. The exception here is Lake Buffalo, which is a relatively small storage, only holds about 24,000 megalitres when it's full. During the winter and spring, we generally pull the spillway gates out of the water, and the water will just pass over the spillway until we feel that there's a time then to lower the gates, and we'll fill it up probably sometime in spring. So while that's at 62% of capacity, if it's effectively 100% at the moment. So at Nillacoody, Epilock, Tullaroop, William Hobble, all those storages, water's just passing over the spillway there. Also at Epilock, we're releasing a little bit of extra water there to get the water back off the spillway and manage it close to the full supply level. At Eildon, as I mentioned, we're managing the rate of fill there. It's at 97.5% of capacity. When I did these numbers on Wednesday, it's now at about 97.2, just with the releases that we've got at the moment. So we are making a little bit more airspace there. Keen-Curran, another big gated dam, managing the rate of fill there. And the MDBA at Dartmouth and Hume are doing the same there with those storages. So resource-wise, we're in a really good position. We've got lots of water, but there's also that position at the moment where we're in with still the rest of winter and spring to come, and what that might mean for inflows and potential flows downstream of the dams. And I suppose that's where the real uncertainty comes from here. So the seasonal determinations in the northern Victorian systems at the moment, we've got the Victorian Murray at 88%, the Broken system at 53%, the Goulburn, Campaspe, Loddon and the Bullarook system are all at 100%. Low reliability watersheds are available in the Campaspe system and the Bullarook system. The Bullarook system's a very small system that's at the top of the Loddon catchments that are just in and around Ballarat, so that when those storages fill, we generally see allocations get to 100% of high and low very quickly. Might ask, why isn't the Murray system at 100% given where we're at? In the Murray, we have, well, these numbers are sort of based on the mid-July figures, but what we've got in the dam is all the unused water from last year. I've got a slide just to show how much water is sitting in there from last year. So that's in the dam and it's all allocated and available, but what we'll see is as the releases from Hume occur and water going out of the dam, we'll see deductions from those spillable water accounts, and those allocations increase fairly quickly over the next month or so. In the Goulburn system, we're at 100% of high reliability water shares, so what that means is we'll now start making reserves for next year. And once we've got those reserves for next year, then we'll start allocating to those low reliability water shares like we did last year. So as far as longer term outlooks, getting to 100% is the first part, and then we'll then start, as I said, building those reserves, and that's key for what we might be looking ahead for in the 24-25 season. I've got there on the last column there is the risk of spill. Got there as that's not announced, so again, with the storages where they are, I've got a slide to cover off on this, but we're still in that scenario where water that's held in spillable accounts will be retained in those accounts for some time to come. I've only included the outlook for the Murray system here, so as you can see, mentioned earlier, all of those outlook scenarios, which are based on different inflow conditions, we expect to get to 100% fairly soon on the Victorian Murray system. It's only if we really see the taps turn off from here, which is very unlikely, that extreme dry scenario. That's really a repeat of inflows we'd expect to get in 2006 type conditions. We're very unlikely to see that sort of scenario play out. But in these scenarios, that's when we start building those additional reserves for operations and allocations to high reliability entitlements next season. So I mentioned the risk of spill earlier. So with the water that's being released from Hume and Eildon and now Epilock as well, deductions from those spillable water accounts will occur. So for those of you who are not familiar with spillable water accounts, it's if you're holding carryover water in Victoria from one year to the next, if you've got a full allocation of your entitlement, anything you carry over effectively sits in what we call a spillable water account. And if we see spills from the dam or releases to maintain airspace, that's where those deductions from those accounts occur. It's sort of almost, if you like, borrowing airspace in the dam. We carry over. If we do see a spill, then that's when you can't borrow that airspace anymore. So we've seen some deductions from those spillable water accounts in the Goulburn and the Campaspe systems this week, and in mid-August we'll get the figures for the Murray, and then we'll process those deductions from spillable water accounts in the Murray system. So another slide with lots of numbers on it. This is a summary, if you like, of the overall water ownership and how much water is available in the Murray system at the moment. So this breaks down how much water has been allocated to each of the private water users, the environment and the water corporations. So private includes irrigators and others who hold water, the environment being the environmental water holders, and water corporations being those who supply water to towns across the region. So we've got how much water has been carried over by each of these sort of sub-customer groups, what's been allocated as new allocations, what's been traded so far, deductions from spillable account, what's returned from spill accounts. So section here about how much water has gone into those spillable accounts, so how much will be subject to spill in the system, what trades occurred, and then this sort of line here is probably the main focus, but this is how much water is sitting in accounts that's currently available to be used. So we're talking in the order of nearly 1,200 gigalitres available for use in the Victorian Murray system this year, and that doesn't include the water that's held in spillable accounts. That volume will grow as allocations increase as well, but also some of that water might end up translating into going to spillable water accounts too. So yeah, we're looking at this volume here. I suppose this is the volume at the moment that's subject to spill, and as I said, we're likely to see deductions from those in the middle of August. If we look at the Goulburn system, similar information, but the only addition there we have is what has actually been deducted from spillable accounts so far in the last column there. But again, if we look at the private water user column there's about 1,100 gigalitres of water available. So if you compare that to the kind of volumes that have been used over previous years, that means, yeah, there's plenty of water to meet those demands that we've seen in past years, and yeah, again, looking for what might be available into the following year as well. The other thing that we're sort of looking at as well and tracking at the moment is trade opportunities, and I know that's important for many of you. Trade from New South Wales into Victoria has been sort of limited at times when the spill risk is high. So when water's traded from New South Wales into Victoria and vice versa, what happens is that, so that happens at a retail level, but at the bulk scale, there's a transaction of water between Victoria and New South Wales. So if water was traded, the New South Wales and Victoria both don't have the ability to take that water in their share of the dam because they're both effectively spilling at the moment. So that's why trade is restricted in that direction. We might see that opportunity open up later in the season if conditions dry and the storage levels start to fall, when there is space for Victoria and New South Wales to actually physically transfer that water. Yep, thanks. The Goulburn to Murray is another trade opportunity that comes on and can be taken up quite quickly. The initial trade opportunity from the Goulburn to the Murray system was about a bit over 60 gigalitres, and that was all taken up quite quickly. There will be further opportunities for trade between those two systems, and those volumes will be announced in mid-October and mid-December. With water owed from the Goulburn system to the Murray, there is that opportunity for trade back into the Goulburn system if required. So looking ahead a little bit, these are next couple of slides are some graphs that we use that are produced by the Bureau of Meteorology about what possible stream flows we might get, and this is the potential inflows into the Hume Dam. So in the pale blue in the background there is the historical range of inflows into Hume for July to August and the July to September period. So you can see there's a very, very wide range of inflows that we might receive. What the Bureau do is take the current conditions and outlooks and then sort of refine that inflow range, and that's what these purple, reddy purpley colour bars are. So you can see that there's a sort of a bit of a narrower range there. for inflows into Hume. But what you can see is that the lower range is probably bumped up a little bit by the current catchment conditions. So that's one of the things that we're taking into consideration when we're, I suppose, well, probably not so for us. We don't operate Hume, but what we're looking at for Eildon. What we see on the left here is how the inflows in June performed with that historical range. So again, sort of above the median case, but not quite at the top end of the 5% type of inflows. So we look at the same information for Lake Eildon. The June figure was sort of above that historical range. I don't have what the Bureau's sort of range looked like for June on this slide, but I think it was sort of not too dissimilar to what July looks like. But again, you can see that sort of lower end range is sort of a bit on the higher side compared to that historical record. So long story short, inflows over the next few months could end up somewhere between sort of 200 and 250 gigalitres, sort of up to 1,200 gigalitres. So huge variations in what we could receive. Just depends on how much rain we get. So this is my second last slide, but just looking at what's ahead, we know that in the coming weeks and months we'll see deductions from those spillable accounts. So customers in the Goulburn, Murray and Campaspe should expect further deductions from those accounts. Not sure how much and for how long that will last. It really depends on whether it keeps raining and whether or not we start to see the point where irrigation demand and environmental water demands might start to kick off if we do start to see conditions dry and those inflows into the dams and those flows in the tributaries downstream of the dam starting to fall. River levels in the coming weeks are still likely to be quite high, so we're getting lots of feedback around high river levels and what that means. But yeah, particularly through over the next 3 to 4 weeks, we expect those river levels to start to potentially ease off if things start to dry. But yeah, we'll see what rain we get. The other possibility is we've got high water availability across the Goulburn and Murray systems. If we do start to see some higher demands, well, what does that mean for the likes of channel capacity and that sort of thing as well? So that's the other thing we're sort of looking at into the future as well. The last slide I have is just a couple of useful links that you might be interested in. Just where that water availability table that I showed before is on the Northern Victorian Resource Manager website, so there's a link to that. The Water Register also has some information there about water availability. Storage inflows are also on our Northern Victorian Resource Manager website, so if you're interested in what's happening in inflows into the dams, that's information's there. And these are all in my favourites list, the Bureau outlooks, and we're looking at those fairly closely. So that's all from me, but yeah, happy to take questions after Deep's presentation. So yeah, thanks for having me.
It's working by itself. All right, thanks also. My name is Deep. I'm from the New South Wales Department of Planning and Environment. I work in the allocations team, so I look after water allocations for the Murray and Murrumbidgee regulated systems. I'll provide an update on allocations and an outlook. It's difficult to follow 2 presentations on the climate, 1 presentation on the water holder, and 1 about water resources. So I've pretty much covered, other presentations pretty much covered everything I was going to go through, but we'll see how we go. So the water management framework in New South Wales is governed by the Water Sharing Plan. Quick recap, the Water Sharing Plan requires us to allocate water based on a assumed dry sequence for the future. But we do have some discretion over the next 2 to 3 months to see how much water is actually in the river systems upstream of storages already and what the flows are like in the river itself to tinker around the edges. But in terms of long-term planning, we have to assume the worst drought on record prior to 2004. So that's when the water sharing plans commenced in the New South Wales Murray and the Murrumbidgee regulated systems. And the allocations are based on a hierarchy of licenses. So towns, high security first, and then general security allocations follow based on the remaining resources. Recap of the current allocations in the Southern Valleys. This is based on the allocation statements published on 17 July. The Murray reached full allocation as of 17 July, 110% to general security. Lower Darling was already full on the 1st of July, so it commenced with a full allocation, considering how high Menindee is. And the Murrumbidgee opened with 37% on 1 July, but there was no improvement to resources between 1 July and the 17 July statement, so it remained on 37% for general security in the Murrumbidgee Valley. Carryover numbers are there. Carryover in the Murray is 50% maximum, but it's all been effectively spilt to get to the full allocation. And carryover in the Murrumbidgee is 28% on average. So this is the statement. Murray allocation full. Lower Darling was already full on 1 July, and both these valleys have reached their maximum. Menindee at the moment is a shared resource, so it's not under New South Wales control, it's under MDBA control, and it will remain under MDBA control until it recedes down to 480 GL. So water in Menindee is used to meet the Greater Murray requirements as per the Murray-Darling Basin Agreement. Murrumbidgee, no change to allocation at 37%, with 28% carryover. Total effective availability on general security in the Murrumbidgee is 65% of entitlement. At the moment, because storages are full and demand is very low in the irrigation districts downstream, so we have obviously the resources in the storages that we're holding. Against those resources, we have liabilities, which is basically water on people's accounts. Because no one is using the water, that liability is not reducing, and therefore it's not freeing up resource in the storages to allocate further. So at the moment, the allocations in the Murrumbidgee are stunted by the low use in the valley. Once usage picks up, we can free up resources in the storages and reallocate that for new allocations. Based on the presentations we've got on the weather forecasting, if conditions turn dry and those storages start receding, and it's not actually the storage capacity that becomes a limiting factor, what becomes a limiting factor is the dry inflows. So from then on, the allocation improvements will depend on how the inflows are higher than the assumed drought sequences that's part of the planning. So we'll go from a lack of usage being a determining factor on allocation improvements to how high the inflows are when compared against the drought sequence being a determining factor for allocation improvements. Not only that, but because Blowering is spilling, a lot of the resource that comes from snowy hydro is actually spilling down the system. So that's previously been assumed as a usable resource, but with demand low and deliveries happening early from the snowy hydro system, that resource isn't being used effectively. So we'll have to reassess the position of the resources in the valley at each assessment, so fortnightly, and see how much of that resource has been, let's say, lost and needs to be replenished from future inflows. Just a resource distribution chart that we provide in our allocation statements. This is for the Murray. You can find this in the allocation statement that's published online. On the left-hand side, we see the distribution of resources on the licenses, General security carryover about 721, general security new allocations about 112, and if you combine those two, you get to 110% of the entitlement, which is the maximum allocation allowed to general security in the Murray under the water sharing plan. And you can see a breakdown of e-water carryover versus consumptive carryover, and e-water allocation and consumptive allocation in general security. These numbers are yet to be finalised as the accounts are still being reconciled, so that you might see a slight change in the coming statements, but not a significant change. On the right-hand side, this is also from our allocation statement, just provides a breakdown of the resources available in the Murray to New South Wales, how those resources are distributed between what we can allocate to our water users in the valley, and then the other requirements within the Murray Valley as per the MDBA agreement. So we have to meet operational losses, evaporation, South Australia's flows, and minimum reserves. So that's a full breakdown of where the water that's available to New South Wales is being distributed between our water users and the other commitments required as per the agreement, and where our resources come from. Storage is about 3,800, and minimum inflows is about 1,200 for New South Wales. Again, Murrumbidgee, same thing, breakdown of resources on this side and how they're distributed to licenses and operational requirements on the left side. The 37% allocation to general security is equivalent to about 700 odd GL of new allocations, which is shown here. Both in the Murray and the Murrumbidgee, general security entitlements have the capacity to take unregulated flows that are within the system if the allocations on their entitlements are not sufficiently high. Because the Murray's reached full allocation, the uncontrolled flow take, which is what the official term is, UCF, the uncontrolled flow take in the Murray for general security entitlement holders has ceased. But in the Murrumbidgee, if you're a general security entitlement holder with 37% allocation and some carryover, you will have capacity to take unregulated flows from the system because the allocations aren't sufficiently high yet to turn that provision off. When the allocations reach a certain level, that provision will be turned off, and any take from uncontrolled flows against general security licenses will actually be debit take, i.e. it's a take against your licensed water, not uncontrolled flow take. These rules are in the water sharing plan, and so you can find them there. At some point, the uncontrolled flow take converts to debit take if the allocations improve sufficiently. Happy to provide more information during the question time or after, if needed, on these provisions. Forecasting for the Murrumbidgee, I'll talk about the uncertainty in these numbers, but at the moment, this is the indicative forecast. We're not seeing improvements in allocations for much of the inflow sequences. So either the dry inflow sequence, we should see no improvement because that's the drought assumption. But anything above dry, we're not seeing much movement here in allocation improvement because storages are full, they're spilling, and there's very low usage in the valley. If usage ramps up, we should see these numbers move up, and because liability will be retired from the storages and we can free up resources for more allocations. There's a comment here that triggering of the IVT spill will likely increase the allocation numbers here by up to 5%, and I'll talk about what that IVT spill is in some coming slides. So, in relation to trade, firstly, the IVT balance spill. So the IVT, for those that are active in the Murrumbidgee or the New South Wales Murray Valley will know that there's a Murrumbidgee IVT balance which allows trade between the Murrumbidgee and the other valleys. The IVT balance goes from 0 to 100, with the Murray at such a high a full allocation, basically. And the Murrumbidgee is still not nearing those full allocation levels. The department has the discretion to spill the balance to help the Murrumbidgee, particularly if storages are physically spilling, because we consider the physical spill of storages in the Murrumbidgee a forced delivery of that IVT. This IVT balance spill will take effect on the 14th of August. Now, Murray's reached full allocation, Murrumbidgee is still lagging behind. 4 days ago, the IVT balance was about 80 gigalitres. I've just checked now, it's dropped down to about 53 gigalitres. So obviously there's water moving from the Murray into the Murrumbidgee because there's lower allocation in the Murrumbidgee. So if this whatever the balance is on the 14th of August is what will spill. If the balance is low, the spill volume will be low. If the balance is high, the spill volume will be high. And therefore, depending on the volume of that balance and how much is spilled, will determine what the improvement is from that spill to these allocations. So we have seen some water come back because of the disparity between allocations in those two valleys. As Andrew touched on, interstate trade is restricted from trade from other states into New South Wales. That's Lower Darling, Murrumbidgee or New South Wales. And that's because our share, the New South Wales share of Hume, is full. And if there's a trade coming into our state, we have to receive a parcel of water to back that trade. And if we can't hold that in our storages because it's full, we can't support that trade. So until Hume recedes and our share of the New South Wales component of Hume has some airspace to store incoming trades, a trade restriction on interstate trade will remain in place. I won't delve on this, but we've already talked, Dale's already given a presentation on what to expect in terms of weather patterns, likely drying conditions, but when they'll turn up will depend on when, I guess, these triggers are met for the IOD and the El Nino, and we've already heard about that, so I'll basically skip this slide. I'll just explain a bit about the difficulties we have in predicting water resources, particularly in systems that are spilling and are full, and particularly when there's no demand downstream to take that resource. So we've already heard this morning about the great uncertainties in weather patterns, how they develop, what the quantity of rainfall will be, particularly where the location will be of that rainfall, and then you combine that with soil moisture, how much inflows that will yield. So that's one set of complexity. And then when it comes into the systems, the regulated systems that we manage, we then add on top of that the complexity of timing of customer behaviour, timing of snowy hydro releases, timing of those inflows coming into those storages. So there's additional layers of complexity added as you move down the system and go from continental scale to catchment scale processes. So the main aim of water management is obviously to capture inflows during wetter seasons and store them in the dam and then release them during drier seasons for irrigation. If we can capture that complete inflow within the dam's capacity, we've got 100% capture of the inflows, and then we can release that full captured inflow for use in the valley. However, if a portion of that inflow is greater than the capacity of the dam, we lose that portion, and therefore we cannot commit to meeting that as a demand down the track. Now, depending on how these inflows arrive will depend how much of the portion of the inflows we actually miss out on. This is a prediction for the Kiwa River in the Murray and the Goulburn River in the Murrumbidgee system. These are tribs downstream of the main storages. The main takeaway here was just to show the uncertainty in predictions and how the weather systems actually play out. And I think Dale touched on the low skill level in autumn when the systems break, and we see that in the skill levels shown in these inflow predictions that they go down in these seasons where the climate systems are breaking and changing over. And so it's difficult to predict what's going to happen, particularly at this time of the year. Okay, so this is a inflow graph for Burrinjuck for inflows from April to March over a 2-year period. We see that the inflows down here were from the recent drought that we went through, and we've seen the inflows move up in percentile, and we hit 3rd percentile inflows for April 21 to March 23. And then this is the pink line here is what we've been tracking up till May this year. Obviously, it's moved up a bit with June, but that's what we're tracking. What I want to show here is, for example, if we take, let's say, median inflows around here, the faint blue lines at the back are all the inflow sequences for about 130 years of data, observed record in the system. To get to about median conditions, the inflows can be dry to begin with and then wet up, or the inflows can be wet to begin with and then dry up, or somewhere in between. There's no single path to get to median conditions. There's multiple ways to get to the same condition over the long period. And so if we're developing a new tool to help, I guess, our customers understand these risks a bit more, in the Murrumbidgee particularly. So if we were to create a model where we fixed the total inflow period, or the inflow volume over a given period of time, so this is for, let's say, 2 years, we fixed the total volume into Burrinjuck and Blowering. So the Blowering volume for that period is fixed about 600 gigalitres. The Burrinjuck volume is fixed probably about 1,500 gigalitres or whatever that number is over there. But let's say we say to the model, give us 50 different examples of how those inflows can arrive. So the model will spit out 50 different sequences of how those inflows can arrive. On top of that, if we say, okay, now look at the historical demand patterns and randomly select 50 different demand patterns that the customers have, the way that they've used water in the system. Give us 50 different tributary inflow patterns. And then that will determine the variations in demand downstream of Wagga in the Murrumbidgee system, for example. And in the end, what we get is when we run that model, we get such a large variation in outputs in terms of storage levels in Burrinjuck and Blowering. And that's because of the large variations in customer behaviour and the way that those inflow sequences arrive. So the thing here is you've got this model telling you this is the likely variation, for example, in Blowering. Well, you can nitpick in these scenarios, okay, well, forget about all the variations in customer demand. Let's just look at the variations that apply in these particular years. But for this, we see that because storages are full, we've got all these different variations. The amount of spill in these storages can vary significantly. And that's coming back to my original point. The amount of water that we can capture effectively is the amount of allocations we can provide. And if this is the variation in spills in these storages, for the same assumptions, the same use assumptions, and same inflow assumptions, but different patterns, this is an indication of the uncertainty we have in how these systems are going to play out in the next 3 to 4 months. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.